Hi everyone, welcome to UltraFresh presents Kitchen Bytes. I'm Dhruv Trigunayat, the CEO of UltraFresh India, and today I'm joined by four young, exciting minds who are industry experts in their specific fields for a fresh, futuristic, and forthcoming chat about all things kitchen. First up, we have Mr. Yazad Irani. He works directly with the CMD of the Rustomjee Group, Mr. Irani, and undertakes business development and project management of some of the best constructions in Mumbai. He has a panache for technology and design. Next up, we have Pearl Jimmy Mistry, who is a director at the Della Group, and she undertakes luxury furniture production as well as some large interior turnkey projects. Pearl hails from the London Business School, and we're very happy to have her here today. We're also joined today by Zhea Kapadia, one of the hottest upcoming interior architects in Mumbai. She studied at the University of Westminster in UK and currently works with NUDES as an associate interior architect. Lastly, we have Danesh C Rustom, the principal designer at Melfra Design. Danesh handles a large team of diverse professionals along with handling the system building, hands-on training, and also site supervision for his company. So, we discussed all the delays in timeline and stuff like that and how we dealt with the customer. So that sort of brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk about because, at the end of the day, it is the customer delight and the quality of the product we deliver to the customer that we're all striving for. But when you talk about a site, there's so many different parties and stakeholders involved. You have the civil work, you have the plumbers, you have electricians, and especially as vendors who do, say, only the modular kitchen or say only the wardrobe. Sometimes that whole coordination becomes difficult, and the person who suffers because of all of that is the client. So I sort of wanted to understand and get a feel of everyone and how we can work better together. So Zhea, at site, because you have, usually you're having a contractor and various people working and you need them to meet their project timelines. How does that work? How do you think you can work better? And I know that you haven't worked with many modular furniture people before, which is a big problem, but you should change that. But why is that, and why do you feel more comfort building on site, and how do you see that panning out, working together and things like that?
So when it comes to handling the different contractors, like you said, I think it's important to have that one project manager who acts as your middle person, right? So the architect would discuss whatever their needs are with that project manager. Yeah. And then it's that project manager's job to coordinate all the other, like you said, the electrician, the plumbers. So it's his job to do that. And he's the one who sets the timelines. I mean, you have to, and he's the one who has to follow up. You need someone to follow up constantly, right? Because that's how you, get the work done.
Sure.
So the project manager is your middleman. The client and the architect have that discussion where they are the decision makers, right? But, and also when it comes to, like you said, modular furniture, with kitchens, I thought this earlier, that it's, my client would want something more bespoke and more, as per their arrangement, but
more flexible.
More flexible. But as I'm seeing more, modular kitchens has a lot of variety. You are bound to find something that your client likes, and it is easier, it is simpler, just quicker. Like you said, they want less contractors to be on site, right, at once. So that would change for me, my preference.
Awesome.
Because it is easier, it is the way to go. And most people are doing that, even with furniture. It's just quicker. You don't need to stand on the carpenter's head and be like, okay, you've been delayed for a week. But when you go for modular furniture, the vendor can tell you, okay, your material is reaching site now. In the next 10 days, it's going to be fixed, and that's it. That's done. So it's easier. So modular furniture would be the way that I would.
Awesome. We've converted one of them.
Yeah.
So Danesh, same point to you too, especially considering that I know that you work with modular vendors. So how does that go about for you? What do you look for in the vendor? And also in terms of working on site, how do you think we can do it better? How can we work better?
We love using modular kitchens because, especially in a pre-COVID time, the reason being that modular kitchens actually have a lesser human contact. which is something that in COVID times is the hour of need. We have to have finished products brought to site with a lesser amount of human contact. So whether it be loose furniture or kitchens or any particular thing in the house or a corporate space. So most of our corporate spaces also have modular kitchens involved. Although they are small in the pantry, we still prefer modular, as it saves time as well. It gives you better finishing, and to be very honest with you, not trying to like butter up Dhruv, but
no, you can do it. That's fine.
We've always had a nice customizable option as well available with Ultrafresh, which is quite satisfactory in our sense. And regarding the kitchens, for the ergonomics and the decision makers in the site, usually, at least from what we've come across, there's always a mutual understanding and a mutual decision between the architect or the designer and the client. So the architect obviously has to, or the designer has to understand the client's need if he wants to go against the regular norm of ergonomics. Yeah. Because there might be some particular, maybe a disability, maybe something that they prefer in particular, hence that has to be incorporated into the space. So usually it's a mutual decision, as Zhea had mentioned, but ideally the designer's duty is to see that it matches the site's image or the vision that he had to have it come to life. So yeah, other than that, modular furnitures have a lot of finishes, as Zhea had mentioned. Yeah. So we always prefer it in comparison.
Awesome.
And in regards to how maybe we could improve, many designers should actually be aware or made aware of what can be used when.
Right.
So many people use 165-degree hinges under the counter, which is actually suggestible. Yeah. But many people use the regular box hinges, which in turn creates an issue usability-wise. Yeah. So those things, if kept in mind, then modular kitchens do give a much better finish in comparison to a regular contractor. The reason being that you can't possibly have, I think Pearl would also agree because she has a factory of her own, that you can't have those kind of machineries on site to give you those kind of finishes. And hence, they are a better go for the future.
Kind of driving on the same point, because you're dealing with the luxury segment, so obviously you have much larger projects that you're undertaking, etc. And you're also doing the production. I know that most of what you do is under the Della brand, but then how do you handle taking the turnkey for luxury apartments? Because especially those clienteles and the budgets they're working with, they can be much more demanding. And how are you handling those things on site? But also, what are the kind of things you look for in the vendors or OEM suppliers or brands that you work with generally? So what is it that has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Sort of want to know more.
So Dhruv, like you correctly mentioned, with turnkey projects, it's very difficult to know when to draw the line with the client. But that being said, Della prides itself in the fact that we supply everything from pin to piano under the Della brand, as well as being that one person, the go-to for a client, which gives them a great amount of satisfaction and ease. So for that kind of after-sales service or that kind of personalization or commitment that we could give a client, we need the same coming in from an OEM vendor or somebody who we are dealing with. So whether it's a category A, B or C in the luxury segment, we need to ensure that any company we deal with gives us that level of comfort so that we with great confidence can go ahead and pass that same level of comfort on to the client. So that becomes very important in the decision making for any company we work with. With kitchens, like Danesh mentioned correctly, you cannot compete with a factory finish. At the same time, the beauty of being able to scale and do multiple projects at once is by understanding and appreciating the ability that people come with core competencies. So if you train your factory and your kitchen team to just be masters in kitchens, even within Della, they become a sub-business unit and they start catering to all of our clients and projects. So whether we would be dealing with our factory or anybody would be dealing with UltraFresh or any other kitchen company out there, I think if the process and the standardizations are set in place, there isn't going to be any room for kind of problems or conflicts arising later. So whether it's how your site measurements are taken, or at what stage you do it, how the delivery schedule is put, or for that matter the payment schedule, it doesn't matter whether it's in-house, whether you're working with somebody else. These are basic principles and foundations you need to lay down.
On that point, because like what she said, that she wants the vendors, Pearl said vendors should be, be able to have good systems and processes and be able to service the interior designers and the architects that well. I think after sales service too, right? Because like for you guys, I'm sure like if your client is approaching the UltraFresh call center or like, their service, it's not your problem what happens to the kitchen for the next 10 years. So they have someone else to take care of that, sort of takes away your headache. Does that work for you? Does that happen?
Yes, absolutely. So we prefer working with professionals and companies. The reason being that someone can be held accountable if something goes wrong on site. So in an individual, you never know that you'll get 100% finished product, or you might not even know whether you'd get it on time, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So when you are working with a professional company, there are certain time frames which they adhere to. There are certain services they provide post installation of their products as well. So I think that should.
Danish, to just continue with that, with the industry we're in, loyalty and relationships go a long way. Because anything that we do, whether it's a kitchen, whether it's a residence, whether it's an office, everything is from a long-term perspective. So we don't look at anything for less than 5 years. And I would even say 5 years, a lot of our things can go ahead and pull on, but it's just about design and aesthetics and people having the ability to start replacing things. So if relationship and loyalty and the accountability factors aren't taken into consideration, I think each of our brands would face a really hard time sustaining through.
But you also spoke about scale, and I think that's very interesting because I want to bring in Yazad into that. So one of the things we struggle with, which is something that has started in the last few years, is that a lot of the builders, when they give possession of the houses, they might give a platform or a granite platform already there, and they're never to standard sizes. So it's very easy for a carpenter to build a kitchen around that, and I'm not saying Rustomjee does that, I'm saying in general. But there has been a long call for the last 5-10 years with all the modular brands that, can we speak to the real estate industry and sort of put a united front and saying, can you standardize the sizes? So the customer is much easier for the customer. They can choose a carpenter, they can choose a modular vendor, and the price goes down because you're not customizing every single unit. So what have you thought about that? Have you had discussions based on that?
Well, Dhruv, I would firstly like to totally agree with your point. I believe standardization goes a long way. What it will do for kitchens, and when I love the idea of you approaching the developers as a fraternity and actually saying, why not work together from the design stages so that we can plan so that customers, when they eventually want to move in and have their own personalized modular kitchen, I don't have to go and break down things and make them spend more money. And at the end of the day, all of us over here want the perfect finish for the customer. We want them to be happy. I believe if we actually incorporate this as an industry for the future, it will really shine, and kitchens overall will become so much more loved and so much easier to customize. And it won't be, I would say it would be the norm almost to come in when you're buying a house. You come sit down with our sales team, we talk you through it, we express all the different options you have, all the new technology that's brought to the table. And then because of the standardization already, it's going to be a breeze to actually have from a planning to the design, construction, and actually handover phase. I really do believe that this is something we should do as an industry, all working together.
Something that always hurts me when I think about it is if you have a fashion influencer on Instagram and he or she talks about a particular brand because that brand is paying them to talk about it, it is not seen as unethical. That's their job, that's their revenue model. But when an architect or an interior designer works as an influencer and the client realizes or knows that there is some kind of a commission structure or remuneration with the brand that they're talking about, sometimes they see it as a conflict of interest, sometimes they see it as unethical. So what do you guys have to say on that? Because I'm sure you deal with so many brands across the house. There must be brands that you work with more frequently. They must have come to you with some kind of commission structures. So how do you see a way around that to give the client that kind of confidence or normalize this kind of remuneration? Because we all want to make money at the end of the day. That's why we're working for it. Right?
I feel like with my clients, they would have that trust in me to know that I would not endorse a brand that I don't believe in, right?
Yeah.
And so I would I mean, I would, okay, so say I would show them UltraFresh, but I would also show them products from, say, 4 other brands. And if they happen to like UltraFresh the most, I can't force them to not like the other ones, right? So it's also their decision, and I would, if I really believe in it, I would also give them reasons to go with the product, because at the end of the day, I mean, if the quality is not good of a product, it's not just the vendor who gets the blame. I would get the blame because I was the one who made them go for that. Right. So I mean, it's ethical in that way, and they would trust me enough. And when it comes to commissions, I mean, the client always does know that there is, like, I would be open about it. I wouldn't necessarily tell them, but they know. I mean, you know, as a client, if someone endorses a certain brand, you would have an idea that, okay, there is something, you know, behind it.
Yes. What about you, Danesh?
So I'd like to add into that, saying that yes, there is a trust factor involved, but it's not always that we get clients that trust us blindly. There are always new clients who have come through referrals, and they always bring up the topic that, you know, there might be a commission structure involved for your company, hence you're recommending, say, UltraFresh or any other particular kitchen or any other product. Now, to understand that entire process, we have to understand how this entire commission structure started in the first place. So as trends are evolving, as expenses are increasing daily, coming from a person who's handling a staff of 25 people since the last 5 years, it becomes very difficult to keep up with expenses. Hence, agreed, other people also might have that same issue. So people want cheaper designs. They believe in volume brings the cost down, but that's not always the case in the service industry. Right. That might be the case in the manufacturing industry. Hence, the architects and designers occasionally do tend to keep a commission structure in certain companies because they are compelled to. It's not that they want to, they have to. So it's, I agree, I completely understand it from their perspective. Right. And I believe that there has to be a trust between your client and yourself. So the easiest and the simplest thing is a price-to-price comparison. Okay. But we've had various cases in which the price of a certain material is cheaper. Say, for example, a plywood vendor. He'd give you a cheaper price on the ply, but he'd charge you double in the veneer, and he'd cover up that particular discount. Okay. So we have to constantly be in touch. So as Pearl had also mentioned, that it is a full fraternity that you have to create. You can't just have a separate vendor for, you know, various things. You have to have that trust on a particular company. So I believe to eliminate that, as it is a problem in general in the industry, so what I could address to vendors and to different companies is that why not give distributorships or franchisees to individual designers in which they earn a certain amount, and since they don't have the retail presence, they're selling the kitchen or the entire thing for you. So hence, if they're selling that particular product, they earn a certain amount, but that amount is not directed onto the client's end. Correct. It's something cheaper than they would get than in a distributor space. So hence, it's a win-win situation for all, wherein the vendor's product is being sold, you have the client who's incurring a cheaper cost, so he's happy, and then margin in the middle is maintained. So the distributors have their own set of clients, so you're bringing traffic as well for the interior designers. Sure. So I feel if such a module can be generated in the future, it would be a little futuristic approach to the same.
Pearl, what do you have to say about the ethics of this whole thing?
So Dhruv, I think taking off what Zhea and Danesh said, it's very important to have that brand trust created. So it's not just about which brand you endorse, what you do, but it also lands up playing a role, and the name also trickles down on you for recommending it in the first place or using it. So we don't leave room for any ambiguity with any client. On day one, they very well know and the specifications of each product being used. So if you have any kind of an objection, that's when you raise it, and that's your chance to flag it. We justify what we do by the specifications we use as support material. So that gets taken care of, and that's why in a turnkey contract, you don't have too much going up and down. With working together and collaborating and pitching together, I wouldn't know too much of it in this sense, because very honestly, we only go ahead and pitch one brand. Right. But from that being said, coming back to the vendors and the suppliers that you're using and dealing with, we as a company have our categories laid out, and the same categorization is passed on to the client with the understanding, after which you're welcome to go ahead and do it. But there has to be mutual respect for a brand. So tomorrow, if I were to get a client into your showroom, you have to mutually respect me as the architect or designer making those decisions. I need to give you some amount of respect and credit for all the knowledge you possess in your field and domain. So I think that mutual respect, that mutual understanding, and I think it all comes back down to the paperwork that you do. So before you get into an agreement or a contract, lay out the facts very clearly. So tomorrow you could, out of goodwill, just refer a client to somebody for your interior, for an interior project or a turnkey project. But what's to say they're not going to cut you off in the process and go ahead with someone they're getting a commission from? So I think if you have that equation very clearly sorted and very open and honest with everybody, I think you're in a better place, because we do need to work on collaboration, but at the same time we need to work on it in a more structured manner so that it's more sustainable and long term.
So Yazad, like something on the similar lines, because we're talking about how can we collaborate and work better together. One of the things that has played on our minds and we've sort of discussed before is that when you have a large apartment building, say with 100 apartments, the size of the kitchen in all those 100 apartments is going to be identical. But every family that lives there will have a very different need for what they need in a kitchen. So is there a way that we can work with developers in a way that we can give a customized solution to each of the houses instead of giving a one-size-fits-all project order to the whole building?
Dhruv, I would say that your idea is obviously something that would change the industry when it comes to kitchens. I would say the problem comes in that when we are designing the building, everything, we literally every centimeter of it is calculated, not only in the way we are using the area, but also the passages, the living room. And when you change everything like that, my kitchen can either get compromised, or in our case, we treat every part of the house equally. It's just all as important. So the kitchen is designed so that it gives an opportunity for someone to come in and have different options in that space. I do think that at this moment we can standardize something again where I give you a space, but I keep the conduiting in a certain area. I keep the way we do let's say the plumbing in a certain way, so that when you come in tomorrow, even in that space, we have decided already that you can give the customer 6, 7, 900 options based on what they want, based on who's using it. And I believe this is a very dynamic thing, because tomorrow when I'm buying a house, I'm going to be spending hours looking at my kitchen. I mean, I really do take a keen interest in that. And it will be a big problem if I cannot do what I want and I cannot use that space the way I intended to because of the constriction or whatever. So again, it should be a collaboration from the planning angle all the way from the beginning. And I believe everyone, and ultimately our customer, will be extremely happy with the product.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think we can come up with some innovative ways of working around that and giving choices. At the end of the day, I think something that we all spoke about is having flexibility of options. Pearl said ABC categories. Zhea spoke about giving them different branded options and things like that. You spoke about something very similar, that in the same building, can we give them flexibility to pick different kind of configurations of kitchens and everything.